the end of the day, what any of us wants is to come to work and work with people that make you better and also make it exciting for you to come to work every day, right? And we live in a world now where we've gone fully remote in most cases, right? You're having different interactions with people. It's more important than ever, ultimately, to work with people who you like and who make you better.
Welcome everyone to this episode of Build Stuff, Be Kind. We have the founder and CEO of Planet Atmos, a Web3 gaming studio, and got to demo it, which was dope. Kevin, welcome, dude.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's exciting. Obviously great to meet you at South by and excited to chat today.
Yeah, likewise. I think it's such like a whirlwind of a conference where there's just so much happening and so many conversations, and at the same time, it's always incredible to me when I can meet people like you and have, like, even in the chaos, like, I feel like still getting an opportunity to really connect with someone and have a conversation and really get to know you and your business and what you're doing, and getting to demo the game was definitely a highlight of the trip. That was dope.
For sure. So it was definitely, it was fun watching you play too, right? And getting excited about it. And
yeah,
obviously, the game is called XOGP. I'm not going to give any dates on when it's coming out, but it is a flight-based combat racing game. And I was definitely walking around South by with a handheld PC so people could play it.
Dude, so fun, which is like such a fun and unique, like, icebreaker and just like cool way of, letting people know what you're all about. But yeah, such a fun way to have something to do. And then if you don't want to talk to people, you just, sit in the corner and game a little bit. So that's a win-win tool.
100%. Yep. Social filter, right?
Yeah,
social
exactly.
Opener, social filter.
I got to check out for a minute.
Yeah.
Good. I love it. Well, excited to really walk through your journey. You're building this studio, building this game. I'm sure also have just other games or concepts in the works, as well as this is a Web3 game. So you have NFTs involved. You've got
absolutely
a community that you're managing. You've got all sorts of things. So let's maybe even start there with, what did you assume going into starting a gaming studio, especially in Web3, and that you went into this, and what is one thing that's significantly different than maybe what your initial assumptions were?
Oh man, there's a lot of ways to answer that one. So, I mean, by way of a little bit of background, I've been in the blockchain space in general for, almost 10 years, or actually a little bit over 10 years, in various capacities, as both a founder and on the technical side. And so I come into gaming from the new side and Web3 from the, the veteran side, I guess, is you could say, which is a little bit abnormal, I think.
Yeah.
And
sure.
So certainly, some of my, revelations have very much been around sort of the, some of the challenges that we face, just from a build out standpoint, from a team construction standpoint, and otherwise, for the differences between, different types of art specifically, and working with different types of artists, in order to bring concept to reality, right? I came into it. I have a phenomenal core team, that all brings kind of very different expertise. But also that means building out, some of the pieces that they need in place, to be successful. And so I think, going back to your original question, actually the biggest kind of, shock to the system, was some of the interactions with our art teams, because those people are just so phenomenally talented, and the way they see the world is so different than I, with a background in engineering, come at certain problems.
That's super cool. I think that's such a fun and interesting challenge. I think is unique in a lot of ways to gaming, that it is such an art form. I mean, your background is this beautiful scene and
full credit to my creative director, Tommy Lee Edwards, on that.
Dude, sick. But it's also functioning, you had to engineer the, how that now functions in the game. So I think that's such a cool part about gaming, is that there's such an art, like as a medium, and then also
the mediums within the mediums within the medium.
No
right?
doubt, the layers, yeah, for sure. When you set out building that team and coming from, because you also launched this as an NFT project, or as a Web3 project.
Yep.
You not only decided to build one business, you probably build 7 businesses at the same time by going that route. Whether you knew that going in or not, you're managing community, you're managing these, drops, these collectors, all sorts.
You can know it and not know it at the same time, right?
For sure.
I certainly, on paper, knew what I was getting into. You're absolutely right. Right. When you're blockchain is phenomenal, but it's good for very specific things, right? And at the end of the day, it's there for digital provenance. It's there for the trustless transfer of value, and this idea that you can make digital objects permanent, right? Which is a fantastic thing, but it is technology. It's meant to be additive, right? And that means that it has to accelerate other things, right? You brought up community. Community is a huge piece, right? You see it even, most recently in the Solana meme coin craze that's going on, in real time as we're having this conversation. But it's because these communities are self-organizing around these different things. And, you can't fight that momentum. And anytime you're releasing, a blockchain related project, you do need to build in public to a certain degree, which is uncomfortable, right? It's something that all of us as founders, right? You think about, there's parts that you want to show, and there's parts you're like, okay, I'm still working on that. I want that to be perfect before it comes out there. And is a constant give and take with that. Right. Totally. And, it's certainly something that for, myself and for my creative team is at times, that those needs of build in public are at odds with how we want to behave creatively. And it's a constant battle, but it's also important because these people that are joining a community, they're the people that are absolutely the most excited about what we're trying to bring to the world. Right. We developed IP and story and everything about Planet Atmos, right? And everything that we're building, gameplay that we're building, is taking place inside this world and on this planet. And so the people that want, I'm not going to say that everybody comes at everything with good intentions all the time, but in general, right, the fervent supporters that you have are coming at this from it. I just want to participate. I want to be a part of something early. Yeah. Right. In the blockchain world, you're always going to have people who FUD projects down the line, et cetera. But, that build in public paradigm, right? Really, you're trying to serve your customer early and make them evangelists and make them a part of it. Right. Because at the end of the day, you want to build something that's big and has that permanence. It's again, coming back to blockchain, that's a technology that is a tool that you can incorporate to make things better in a digital space. Right. And so that's how you can empower your community to be a part of something. And that's from my perspective anyway, is a huge piece of it.
Yeah. I think that's such a really great way to put it. It's like that it's a technology that really is additive to, this digital space. We've had digital games, we've been living digital lives for 2 decades now or more, and we're just getting to this point really of, you know, these digital assets having interoperability as well as like ownership and usability and rights, and it's just an interesting time
for sure. Well, I mean, it's funny. You brought up. I'll pick on two words that you brought up there, right? One was rights, and the other is interoperability, right? Interoperability is one that gets used a lot, but it means something different to everybody, because it's really hard, especially in gaming, for me to say, well, your asset is usable over here, right? Because what does that mean? That if
still got to engineer.
There's like a lot of problem solving between here and there. But I think, you know, we can all agree, right? And this is kind of a simple statement, and that economies with property rights are better than those without them, right?
Yeah.
And if you boil it down to that, and you're saying, I'm giving the end user the right to actually own this thing, right?
Totally.
Even though that thing is digital, even though that thing exists within the game, right? And I can't, as the issuer of that thing, I can't take it away or engineer it out of existence, right? That doesn't mean I'm building a game. That doesn't mean I can't, you know, adjust the meta of the game so that the game is better, but it means I can't take your stuff away, right? And I frequently use the, you know, traditional sports as sort of a, you know, a way of looking at things, right? When you pick up, I played hockey, so that's my favorite one. But when you're 5 years old, you put on a pair of skates for the first time. Your parents spent some money so you can get some hockey gear, which was not cheap, by the way. Thanks, Mom and Dad. But
for sure,
if I step on the ice and then I never play hockey again after that moment, well, my parents can at least take that gear. They can probably get 60% back on the dollar for what they spent on that, right? Because they own it, they paid for it, and therefore they have rights to it.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
It's super simple, right? Like if you do that in gaming today without Web3, without that idea of digital ownership, then you have nothing. Right. And if I quit playing that game tomorrow, I walk away with nothing. Now that problem exacerbates itself if, you know, you spend a ton of time, and now when we're in the digital space, you're participating in community and you're putting time and effort in building digital identity on top of that. And these things, these digital objects become a part of that digital identity. This is who I am. Right. And, you know, there's a big overlap in WoW players and other folks from sort of, you know, the within the blockchain space because of this idea of building, you know, a character, building a digital identity, participating in a space. And then at the end of the day, you don't actually own that, right? You're beholden to some terms of service that, you know, you can't do anything with it.
You own the right to play the game.
Right. And now that's in stark contrast with the ideas of, you know, well, because I'm playing a game, I should be earning money. That's not true either. Right.
Totally.
Like having ownership rights to things does not necessarily mean that you should be financially benefiting at in a replacement level. Because if you, again, using my sports analogy, right, I played minor league hockey or very, very minor league hockey after school for a year. Right. And you make nothing. Yes, I got paid to play a sport, but it was, you know, barely anything.
Yeah.
And that's at the almost the top of the pyramid, having, you know, done something for a very long period of time, been extremely competitive at it. And that's kind of this fallacy that we're, you know, have to contend with is, well, no, you have to also be good at the thing in order to be earning. But ownership on the whole should be a right.
Yeah. No, I think there's so many compelling uses and strategies and tools that I think, especially as things, you know, the onboarding gets more efficient. We joke that South by and 2021, like the peak of NFT mayhem. It's like people are hitting me, oh, like, what's this NFT thing? How do I get involved? It's like, all right, you got like an hour to like come and sit with me and go through this process and like write down your code, your seed phrase, right? Like be in like zero distractions.
Then let's talk about your OPSEC after that, right?
Yeah. And so it's like, and as the narrative, the pendulum swings, like everything has to be 100% decentralized or bust, to like, okay, well, yes, when and where it makes sense, but in reality, there's some benefits of centralization in certain aspects, or there's some benefits of smooth onboarding and on-ramping and ways that you can still attach the rights and still be decentralized but connected in a more
at the end of the day, right,
efficient way.
UX trumps everything when it comes to application design, right?
Oh, yeah.
We know this. We've lived in the internet era for too long, right? Ease of use trumps everything because people like it when things are easy. And at the same time, right, when you're giving people the opportunity to own something, right, you are actually, you're fighting one of their inherent desires at times, which is, I don't really want to be responsible for that.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's societally, we all carry around credit cards and we use them all the time. And if something goes wrong, you call Visa and you say, hey, somebody spent my money.
Yep.
Right.
It's true.
And you're inherently not responsible for that. And you get used to that. Right. And then now you're telling somebody that, hey, you're responsible for this thing. And if you lose access to that wallet, you've lost the thing. It's a very scary concept. I gave a talk on this literally at NFT NYC in like 2019 that, there's a significant responsibility on behalf of builders in the space to build better applications and build more educational angles for users, because you run into this, and it happens in every boom and bust cycle where you churn users out and they don't come back, right? But in blockchain in particular, where you're dealing with something that potentially has financial value to the person who's holding it, if they have a bad experience, whether that's getting hacked, losing access, losing a password to something, losing a seed phrase, or just can't use the application because it's too complicated, you run the risk of losing that user, not just for your application, but for everybody else in the space that's trying to build stuff. Because fundamentally, right, that is, it's when you're trying to get people to cross that chasm, like it's a big gap. And like, if you get partway there and decide you're bailing out, like it's, you got a long way to fall.
Yeah. 100%. I want to step back to, there's, especially in crypto, because there's such a ownership, usership, like there's this kind of new frontier, there's this Wild West, there's also the emotions attached to financial gain and loss. And, we talked about decentralization being like the end all be all 2-3 years ago, and now it's not that that's still not a core tenet of blockchain and crypto and in general, but the ethos of the space, I think, runs deep, and there's a lot of, I guess it feels like there's a lot of like emotion and like bias or this is how I view it, or this is how like very, very clear, people have, and I guess you could say that about really any space in general. But I think in crypto, I think I've seen it the most transparently, that like those lines of ethos and where people draw their lines and what is important to them. Where do you feel like for you and Planet Atmos, like where are you trying to align in that balance of the ethos of, components of crypto or blockchain and Web3, and also this knowledge that, like, to build a successful game, you've got to onboard the masses, and you've got to get people who don't give a crap about any of that. So how do you navigate that as, the founder of a studio trying to play both sides?
Absolutely. I mean, so I think you hit on a couple things, in the question that in some ways, I like have to circle back to, right? At the end of the day, right, I wanted to get into gaming because I was already part of the blockchain and the Web3 ecosystem.
Yeah.
And because fundamentally I saw that was an opportunity to onboard the masses. Yeah. And so it's not necessarily, it's not letting go of one idea and, and taking up the other, as much as, this gaming as a whole, right, is an industry that, like we talked about before, is kind of, it's tailor made for Web3, in that these digital objects should be ownable by players, right? It's such a fundamental, simple thing.
Totally.
When you say it, but it's, you say it and I can, simple, but not easy. Right. And that is very much attributed to, a full credit to Jocko, for that saying. But, it is one of those things, right? It's hard to do, but it is easy to think about and say, yes, that's how it should be. Right.
Totally.
And so, like, from a personal standpoint, like I've been in the blockchain space for, quite a while as a builder. And I worked as an Ethereum smart contract engineer. I built an NFT marketplace before I was in gaming. And that was, at a time where, it was extremely nascent, but this idea that, you can build exciting ecosystems, and again, get people excited about, hey, I can own this stuff. I can be a part of this, right? That was what drew me to do what we're doing now, honestly.
Yeah.
And so it is a balancing act, right? From an ethos standpoint, I will say, I generally think that zealotry in all its forms is probably not great, right? When you've locked so far into an idea that you can't see, in your peripheral. And I think that there's parts of the blockchain space that have become like that over the years, where they're like, we only like this specific flavor of what this space is doing. And I think that, personally, right, like, you want to build things that are safe for users. You use the word transparent in the question, right? You want to build as transparently as you can. And all at the same time, right, you want to hold core to that. You want to, if you're building things that have, an end user, you have to hold that user in the highest regard. And, I will, again, full credit to somebody else here. When I worked at Hulu for a little while, and that was their first core principle, that was like day one, you walk through the door, it was start with the user. And it's such a good statement. And I've kind of I've always held on to it. I won't take credit for it being my an original thought there, but it's so key, because we build at the end of the day, we're building software. We're building something that's for somebody else to use. And, we said user experience is paramount, and it kind of just goes, it's a through line through everything. So, I think of that as kind of a very key piece to, honestly, building anything in the tech space.
Yeah. No, I think that's well said. And it really is a lot of balance, and a lot of finding that perspective and weaving that thread, because at the end of the day, you're trying to build something meaningful and impactful, and make it so that it resonates with a broad audience in the niche that you're in. And so I think it's important to have that clarity of, here's where we're going, here's what we're trying to accomplish, and then really mapping towards that. Along with that, as you've built out this team, what are one or two of the core values that you feel that really drive you as a leader, that drive, you as a team builder, and that drive you as a, leader in the Web3 space of also engaging with and connecting with the community that you're serving as you're also making a lot of these challenging decisions?
Totally. I mean, I think, I'll point at people over process as kind of again, it's a simple thing to say. It's not easy to do in principle, but I find that, at the end of the day, what any of us wants is to come to work and work with people that make you better, and also make it exciting for you to come to work every day, right? And we live in a world now where we've gone fully remote in most cases, right? Yeah. You're having different interactions with people. It's more important than ever, ultimately, to work with people who you like and who make you better. And those two things sometimes don't always go hand in hand, right? You'll always have, conflicts and people who disagree about things. But the other side of that also is people who are constantly in a state of learning and in a state of, hey, how can I get better from this interaction? What can I do better? And ultimately, are we still pushing towards what our goal was here? With that, another kind of philosophy that I will attribute to Jocko Willink and the Echelon Front guys is default aggressive, right? And the idea, and especially in startups, that idea that, it doesn't mean you're aggressive in everything you do and in every interaction, and you're absolutely belligerent in how you deal with people. It's that in, your day to day, I need to get stuff done. Your first approach is, how do I get to the finish line and do it within the confines of what my goals and what my missions are, and what my team is trying to get done. And then you go, okay, well, is that still the best strategy? And you always have to gut check that. But in startups, when time is constantly a battle and you are consistently pushing, I think that mindset is one that, I know I've talked to folks on my team about, and making sure that we're aligned. And that's how I like to think, although I can confess to not always succeeding at it.
Yeah, we're all doing our best. So for sure. But I love that. I think really aligning with your team, being focused on, here's where we're trying to go, but here's where we're trying to go together. It feels like, and 1,000%, and how to bring everyone together, because you also are operating in this very transparent and open environment. It's like, you guys aren't aligned, it's going to be that much more challenging to align with the community, even if it's the community wants one thing, and as a team, this is where we've got to take this.
That you just hit on the fundamental struggle of decentralization right there, right? And that idea of what is sufficiently decentralized, and the idea that in the early stages of anything, it is very unlikely that somebody on the outside looking in can give you reasonable feedback on something and make an informed decision.
Totally.
Right. And that's not to discount that, but it is to say that, often when you're looking at the path to decentralization, and that's kind of one of my favorite phrases, right? Decentralization is an ideal. It's not you
can't just check that box.
So, right. You can't just wake up one day and say, look, we did it. We're decentralized, right? It takes an educated group to be able to make decisions efficiently. And so what you're doing at that point where you're decentralizing is your community has become sufficiently engaged, incentivized, and educated to the point where they can make decisions that are as good or better than the individual could, or the
Totally.
group of people in a core team can. And that I think it's phenomenal what's happening in the space. It's pushing those things forward. I think DAOs are fantastic case studies. But I also think, right, like in the early stages of a project, it is a constant battle, right?
Totally.
It's just the reality, because as a founder, as a builder, as a core team, where you want to take something, and you want to break that fourth wall and let people in at the same time. You're like, well, but we're losing time by doing that. And we know we need to get to here.
Yeah, the last thing you want to do is just die on a sword to die on a sword. Like it's like, we're there. It's like, okay, but like this thing's either not going to exist, or we're going to find this balance of community engaged, input, direction. And at the end of the day, you look throughout history, it's like there's a reason why we have kings and democracies, and we elect people, like there are reasons that time and time, because it's you get enough too many cooks in the kitchen.
It's very, very hard to be an expert on a single thing, let alone several.
Yes, that is very well said. Let's even dig into that more. Because that is true. It's like you said early on that you came into this space as a veteran in crypto and coming into gaming, which I'd say probably is a unique, probably most people were in the gaming space and saw an opportunity to kind of add this blockchain layer. So how do you balance that with yourself as well as your team, of finding the right people who are the experts that you need, and also can also have I don't even remember, I learned this concept years ago, but I don't even remember who it came from, but this idea of like T-shaped people or personalities or skill sets, where it's like depth of knowledge in a very like singular thing, and then breadth of knowledge on enough additional areas where it really informs that like really deep knowledge sector. So I guess my question is, how do you arm people to be experts where you need them to be, and then still be able to like connect between departments and all the things that you're trying to do?
Oh, there's so many unique ways to kind of dig in on this. I love it. So I'll touch it from a couple different places. First, from the entrepreneur standpoint, right? My goal is to all like my team should all be smarter than me and all need to be filling gaps, right? And from a standpoint of like the first phone calls that I made when setting out on the journey to build Planet Atmos was, I called 3 people over the span of a week. And they were one of whom I had worked with on a number of projects in the past, and is just extremely trusted. And I'm like, I want you in on this. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
The second was my head of game design. And because I knew for a fact, he and I had kind of identified a while ago that we wanted to work on some stuff together, but we didn't have the thing yet.
Yeah.
And fundamentally, right, I said, I've got it. We're going to do this. And very much fills a gap. And then, in general, right, you want in that early core team, you want to be thinking about who's able to wear many hats, like you said, T-shaped individuals, right? Experts in a specific field, and who can cover a lot of ground, because in startups, covering a lot of ground quickly is much more important than in general than being, super expert in a specific thing generally.
Totally.
Right. As you grow, you can be more specialized. You can have people that fill specific gaps and are phenomenal at certain things. But in general, I mean, I would say we're still not at that size. Everybody's still wearing lots of hats. Personally, that's part of what draws me to startups. I like that, right? I am a builder. I'm a builder by nature. I like the ability to wear lots of hats. At times, I have to remember that my job as CEO is actually to be doing the hardest thing, whatever the company needs at the time, and not being
whichever
the guy
hat
building.
is getting tossed by all the rest.
Right. That's the gap that actually I need to fill.
Coming on a podcast and hanging out with me, dude. You're like, I don't freaking want to do that. No, I'm just kidding.
Absolutely. No, this is the highlight of my day.
No, for sure.
No, but I at the end of the day, right? Like I said this before. You want to work with good people. It's all of us want that, right? You want to come on podcasts and talk to good people and be excited about it. And it's part of what drew me to Web3 in general. Was I was excited about the people that were talking about things that I was interested in.
Totally.
And so I think, it's always hard to hire, right? In any industry, it's always hard to find those right cultural fits and to be building, that culture. And as you're growing an organization, you hit these growth points where things are different, right? Where you grow past a certain point and you realize, oh, it's not that super tight family of 4 people anymore, because now we're twice as big. And your lines of communication are slightly different, right? And as you get bigger and bigger, you hit sort of those points. And it's important to try to maintain culture and also to let culture evolve as new people come in. Because if you are bringing in good people and you're guiding that but not forcing it, then that culture evolves in a positive way, generally, rather than a heavy-handed, we're doing it like this all the time way, which doesn't really
which is tough like that, because then you get also that growth phase where like systems and process become everything. And it sounds like you and I share some, like just grab a hammer, let's build this thing, let's go. And that's absolutely necessary in early stages, and even in later stage, like at certain times of the business, it's just like, hey, we've got to fix this or we've got to do this. Like it's all hands on deck. But it's something I've had to learn and I'm continuing to learn daily of like, a great process can really enable and empower the things that we love to do more than hinder.
Yep.
But you got to get it right.
And you got to have the right people there first.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Because at the end of the day, that get shit done mentality, that grab a hammer, right? That intangible, if you will, right? Of somebody who's going to absolutely, grab the ball and carry it into the end zone is something that is so core that then you put a process in place that lets everybody work in unison towards that. And those people who are those people who are still carrying the torch or the ball or whatever metaphor I'm using in that version of this sentence, are amplified.
Yeah. Being able to build the right systems that really can empower the team, the objective, and I think there's a I want to say it's in a book. I can visualize the graphic, but it's the idea of like, it's kind of like wheel and spoke, but when you're first starting out, like everything is central, like to the going back to the decentralization conversation is in the initial phase, like everything has to run through you. You've got to make all the decisions. You've got to drive, you got to hire the right team, you got to build. And it all comes to this one place and goes back out. But the evolution of a founder, of a CEO, is really to then figure out how to turn one point of failure into 2 and then 4 and then 8 to where now these efficiencies can be driven.
The role of anyone at any given time, right? The founder's just the guy sitting at the beginning, is find a way to replace yourself. Yeah. Right. Like at the end of the day, it comes down to, find a way, because in doing that, you end up finding those gap fillers and you make the things better. And then there are new problems to solve. Right. And And at the end of the day, like, that's true for anybody in an organization, right? Is when you're thinking about growing, how do I grow? Well, find a way to replace yourself and move up and solve other bigger, better problems.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's such a true statement, and a challenging statement at times.
Simple,
like,
not
well,
easy.
I'm the best at this. I can just do it. It's like, not even that I'm the best, but I just know the process, and it's easier to just figure it out and do it. But then you get humbled and realize that someone's way better, and I can develop a way better system and do it far superior.
And there's always it's that time trade-off, like the time it takes to train somebody new to do something versus, well, I already know how to do that, so I should just do it. Well,
totally.
You're right in the short term.
Yep.
Right? Like, of course you are. Totally. You already know how to do the thing. Of course it's going to get done faster this time if you never let that process go. But also, you never get to do anything else. You never bring in, and somebody else doesn't take on that thing that maybe you're not the best person to do.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. As you've, been at other companies, you've worked on, sounds like, various projects, and now on this project of your own, what is a trait that you really admire in people that you've maybe seen or been mentored by, whether that's like true mentorship or just people you've seen online or read their books, or is there a trait that comes to mind when you think about modeling success around, or the type of leader you want to be, or the type of success you want to have that you've maybe seen or resonate with in others who've maybe gone before you?
A type of a trait. I mean, so in terms of, I'll answer it two ways, right? I think when I'm evaluating people or trying to say, hey, would this person be a good fit for my team? One of the things that I value above a lot of other things is, how do you solve problems, right? We talked about that grab a hammer mentality, right? But also, is a hammer the right tool here?
Good
right?
point. Yes.
Like, what is it like? Now, to be fair, if you can do it with a hammer, great, right? Like, also, but also the it's that balancing of default aggressive plus get it done.
Yes.
Is how do those things work together, and how do you think? What and not that there's a one size fits all. I find it very interesting when talking to people to get a sense of how they like to think about problems and how they approach things, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a non-answer because I'm giving the answer of problem solving, but also I do think that that's a very big component to it. I definitely gravitate on the other side of things, right, to a particular type of coaching or leadership, right? And this is, from my background in sports, I respond well to that get in your face type of coaching.
You've talked about Jocko a lot, so
because that's the kind of when I had hockey coaches and things, the coach that I responded to the best and learned the most from was the guy who would get in my face and tell me I was, for lack of a better term, absolutely fucking up, and
love it.
be completely six inches from my face, telling me what a bad job, but then will give the opportunity the next shift, go out there and prove me wrong. And but I also recognize that style of coaching does not work for everybody.
Yeah.
And it's not something that you like. It's something that works for some people and doesn't work for others. And so in an organization, right, that's not a style of leadership I employ regularly or at all. But it is often, and the values that, somebody like Jocko brings to the table, I find to be extremely valuable in organizational building. But so from a leadership and trait standpoint, right, that extreme ownership mentality, but also
totally
that go prove me wrong, right? I'm telling you, you're messing up. Go prove me wrong. Like, I'm going to give you that next shot, and probably still the next shot after that. But like, because again, we're talking about startups, here, this is what, most of my career has been built around. And it is 98% tenacity. And
no doubt. Yeah. I love it. I actually just listened to Extreme Ownership, and such a good book. And I have the tendency to not have that directness, or to, default to non-confrontation. And I'm learning over and over again, like, it's that balance. It's that, it's finding the right times to be very direct and give that feedback, give that critique, or push someone in that direction. I think as a leader, you also have to recognize that people are motivated by different things and are, learn different ways. And so you kind of have to align around what's going to get this person motivated, or to improve, or to push through when that's needed of them.
Right. And some of that, I didn't always understand about myself, let alone about others. Right. And, I look back both professionally and as a hockey player, and like, there were times where I struggled with coaches that I had. You use hockey as an example again. Right. And in sort of that retrospective moment, right, it was because some of how I learned and how I processed information wasn't understood by that coach. And I wasn't able to articulate how did I want to learn? How was I looking for that feedback? And so within an organization, and as a leader within an organization, period, wherever you are, right, whether, it's really important to be having those conversations with people. How do you like to get feedback? What is it that, that makes you tick, that gets you excited, that, what do you respond poorly to? Because they're not the same. I mean, and in today's day and age of, we're fully remote, you lose a ton of tone dealing over Slack, Discord, Telegram, whatever comms channel you're using. And even on Slack, if somebody doesn't come on video, right, or not Slack, on Zoom, or, et cetera, right? If somebody doesn't come on video, and you lose some of that ability, that human ability to understand what's the intent behind the message or otherwise. Yeah. And I think
I just saw a video where I want to say 55% of our perception of intent is visual cues, like voice and tone is like 20 or 35%. Written is 5 or 10, but like our
body language,
the way we move, our body language is like a huge, I don't know the exact stats, but it was much higher than I thought it would be. I thought, voice and tone would be even more, but it was that visual of seeing someone, and it's just, it's a challenge and an opportunity as a builder to get great talent, but you do have to build good systems and good processes to make sure that like that alignment is there,
especially in this day and age. And sometimes those processes don't survive growth. Right. And you have to, often, right, you have to adjust or change them. Right. When we first started the company, we were going from 4 to 8 people. Right. We had an open door meeting policy. Like, just walk in. Like, if you see meetings going on, like, we'll hold them in public channels and Slack, and like that had to go away as we got bigger. Right. Like,
totally. Yeah. 8 people just camping out in a meeting.
Yeah. Everybody's super interested to know what we're talking about. Now it's like, okay, guys, like, now we're getting to a point where this is an inefficient use of capital. Let's never do this again.
Yes. Totally.
But
no, it's that evolution. It's it's just a game of learning. I think that's what's so compelling about being a founder and an entrepreneur and building business is it's like every day, it's like you're just drinking from a fire hose. You're learning, you're adjusting, and I think, I jokingly and sometimes seriously push back against, traditional education, even though, I graduated college and things, but like in a way, it's funny. It's in the same way that as an entrepreneur, we will give up having a single job to have 12. We will drop out of school to take one class to basically learn 50 things at once,
Having gone through startups, you have gotten your own kind of higher education. Don't get me wrong. Being an entrepreneur, like it is its own battle. You face all kinds of different trials that you can never get. And you know what? Actually, I'm going to back that up. Forget entrepreneurship for a second. In any job, period, no matter what it is, you're going to learn more in your first 6 months on the job than you did in 4 years of college. There's no question about it. It's just just the way that it is. And you know what? That doesn't devalue college. But also it's not for everybody.
Totally.
I went to, I got a 4-year degree, and it was great. It definitely opened doors for me. At the same time, two of the most successful people that I know and some of the biggest mentors in my life did not. Right.
Yeah.
And not only were they phenomenal people, they were extremely successful in a variety of businesses. They were entrepreneurs at their core, and they were very formative to me. I worked for them in my first job as a 17-year-old, and that's so cool. Like they certainly was at a very formative period of my life. But that their soft skills were off the charts. The things that the way that they treated people, the way that they treated their customers, the way that they approached problems and things on a day-to-day basis. And also even in a 2-person business, which is what it was. I was the third person there. Right. They had that, very specific processes and, delineation of who does what and how they got stuff done that let them start other businesses and be serial entrepreneurs. Those 2 people were, neither of them went to a 4-year school. And they were both massively successful
in anything we for whatever reason love to speak in absolutes and it's got to be this way or the other, when in practice and reality, we're all like, everything is a mashup of experience and opportunity and taking risk and doing whatever it takes to get through. So many nuggets of knowledge, of experience. We have one final question we ask every guest. This isn't, we can discuss this as long or as short as we want, but it kind of like sets this is like what all this conversation is set up for, is this question. So for you, Kevin, what role has kindness played in building your success?
A huge role, period. At the end of the day, we all get where we are. You brought up, we're the sum of our experiences as a whole, but we don't get here by ourselves, period. Right. A lot of times it starts early in life. People give you opportunities. People teach you things. People take you under their wing. There are mentors. There are, I brought up the two guys who I worked for in my first job who, they were absolutely true mentors. Your parents, having good support systems. And at the end of the day, right, you brought up a word, risk, right? Entrepreneurship, there's risk, right? Understanding your risk tolerance. You don't do that without, not just you, but your support system understanding that risk, right? I couldn't do what I do without my wife having my back 110%. Doesn't work, right?
For sure.
And it's fundamentally like so kindness, that understanding, that, ability to go out of your way to help somebody else along their journey. I think, you don't get here alone. It's still a journey, right? Here is not permanent.
Yep.
And so, I think that's my answer to that one. It's we're all on this journey together, and you got to help each other along the way.
I love it. I think that's such an insightful and very much in line. You're in the right business. You're in the right industry, because even when talking about kindness, you're talking about community, talking about others and people and coming together. And I think all things that Web3, the gaming industry, even non-Web, like, is so much about playing together, coming together, growing together, creating a better experience in the game together. So I think that's very insightful to who you are and how you approach what you're doing. And I appreciate you joining me today and sharing your experiences, sharing your journey, and what's gotten you here from the decisions you've made and the mentality you brought to each of those decisions. And I'm sure, like myself, a lot of people will come away from this conversation with a renewed focus on or new perspective on how to build in public, how to have that transparency, how to build a team, how to do this entrepreneurial craziness together. So thank you for sharing all that with us.
Thanks so much for having me. I mean, this is super fun. I love talking about this stuff. It's great chatting with you about all of it. And, at the end of the day, it's we all got to pick up a hammer.
Yes, no doubt, dude. I'll pick up a hammer any day, dude. You just say the word, I'll be there. Hammer in hand, dude.
Hell yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I think that's probably the most, insightful, just mind-blowing nugget is, like, I jokingly use that reference all the time, and it's like, what if a hammer is not the right tool? It's like, man, that's a whole different way to even look at that funny, little reference, and so cool and true. So, Kevin, where can people find you? What's the best medium to connect with you online?
We're at planetatmos.com, planet_atmos on X. I am at Kevin Beauregard on X, and look forward to connecting with more of you guys.
Oh yeah, we'll put that in the YouTube description, as well as tag you on socials as these come out. So follow along Kevin's journey. He's got a game dropping sometime this year, hopefully sooner than later, because I want to jump in and play.
Dates coming soon.
Awesome. I love it. So stay tuned for that. We'll get this episode out so people can be ready for when that game drops. So thanks again, Kevin. Really appreciate you. Thanks everyone for tuning in today. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Let us know what you loved about this conversation, and we appreciate you. We'll see you next time.